welcome to yet another episode of Law Unplugged. Today we have with us Mr. Bodhisattva Majumdar. He is a final year law student of MNLU Mumbai. In such a young age, he has managed to carve out a niche in the field of maritime law. He has got more than 15 papers published in both national and international journals of tremendous repute. In this session, he will be taking us through his 5-year journey of MNLU Mumbai, his journey of starting a blog on arbitration and corporate law review, and he will be giving insights on current scenario of maritime law. So make sure you like this episode, subscribe to Law Unplugged and share to as much people as possible. In case of any doubts or suggestions, feel free to reach out to us either on YouTube or LinkedIn. So without further ado, let's jump right into the discussion.
Ladies and gentlemen, today with us we have Bodhisattva Majumdar sir, who is currently a 4th year student at Maharashtra National Law University, Mumbai. He is the founder and editor of the the Arbitration and Corporate Law Review, and he has a keen interest in maritime law, which is rare these days. So without wasting much time, let's just get right into it.
So your take on the Indo-Sri Lanka maritime issue, right, going on right now?
Yeah, so India-Sri Lanka maritime issue is going for at least from 1960s and 70s. So what happened is there was a common area between India and Sri Lanka, which is a rich ground for prawn and shrimp fishing. So what happened was when Sri Lanka was busy in civil war, India kind of scrapped away the ocean floor for prawns using powerful motor boats, and as a result the ocean floor was pretty damaged. And by the time the civil war got over and Sri Lankan fishermen engaged into fishing, they found that resources were damaged, so they moved to Indian areas. Now what's happening is Sri Lankan Navy is often arresting the Indian fishermen and detaining them because the border is not quite defined, and both the governments have engaged in discussion, but still it has not been yet fruitful, and nobody is going to international litigation, God knows why.
Everybody is busy fishing.
Yeah, in other waters.
Right. I guess that that brings us to another question related to you in particular, is that you have acted as associate editor at International Journal for Law and Public Policy. So the question is that what exactly do you find that people lack in, or what exactly do the articles lack in, which you have edited or which you have gone through? And what tips would you give to young writers or young authors who are aspiring to get published in IJLPP?
In my brief tenure as an associate editor, what I found is most of the articles like either originality or relevance. So people, what they do is they pull up 4 papers, they mix them up and make a new one. So it is not detected in plagiarism, but once you read it, you will know that I have read this 1,000 times. So if someone thinks that they can fool a third person by doing this, that's very shitty. So what you can do, what you should do is, first of all, keep up with what's happening around. So this is an habit. You can't just wake up one day and think I'll write an article, I'll take the newspaper and get on the issues. Like every legal case, it will happen through the span of at least 5 months. So regularly you will get update that this stage has passed, that stage has passed, this was the argument, and people will write on them. And after you are through with the current affairs, then you will generally know what is actually the main issue going on. So right, like for example, currently the cryptocurrency issue is brought again because the government is trying to pass a law which will ban cryptocurrency. Previously the court had allowed cryptocurrency, so this is an issue. But you will know that when you are through with all the legal news, because today if I wake up and decide to write on cryptocurrency because I heard someone saying that it is an issue, then I'll write what is cryptocurrency, how it is relevant, blah blah blah. But that's not the issue. You can write it, it will be original, but no one will accept it because you need to write why banning it is difficult for India and how it will affect trade. So this is the main difference. You need to really understand why it is important and and mostly you have to write for professionals. Like you should aim your audience. Like suppose you are writing for practitioners, they already know what cryptocurrency is. They don't need you to tell it. It's simply a Google search away. So you need to address the issues which are not addressed. So that's the most difficult part, because what's not in the papers you have to write from your own brain, and that's where analytical skills come up. So this is the thing which I think everyone should develop a bit.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The most important part, like as you say, you should always be like relevant with the contemporary time. You should always be updated. Yes, sir.
Right, and also I had this one more question. Is that often I'm not able to comprehend why people have board of advisors in their blogs or in their websites. I mean, what purpose do they exactly fulfill?
Firstly, like there are two kind of blogs. One set is institutional blogs. So they already have a board of advisors of the teachers and the VC and sort of thing. But when you start an independent venture, you need people to guide. Suppose we are constantly posting stuff on arbitration section 9, suppose. So we need someone to tell that this issue is already over. Try to get content of different things. So firstly that, they give us direction. So you need people who are actually practicing the field to tell that whether your blog is posting relevant things. Firstly that. Secondly, they give legitimacy. Like when a person approaches a blog for writing this, he or she should know that this is an authentic thing, not a fraud. That they won't just take your academia and publish it somewhere else or waste it probably. So when a person who is an advisor, it brings legitimacy to the blog. And thirdly, like we have association with them. So what they do is when they write on some stuff, they cross publish it. First they publish in their own firm's website, then they publish it with us. So that brings, like, you don't probably follow their firm's website, but you follow our blog. So you will be updated with expert opinions of the people who are most relevant on the field. So you will get the articles of the best people. And also being in touch with them gives us option for co-authorship. Suppose we write an article, but the editors, and we send them that what is your take on this. So they will include one para which tells that how this can be improved or how it can be held. So by this way, advisors guide us.
Right.
I would just add on to it. I would just add on to it. Like as you say, you have to like always write on the blogs which are authentic in nature and all.
Right.
Like, how do you tell a law student or any person who wants to write a blog to choose a blog? Like how do you choose a blog and define that it's authentic or not? How do you like you have like how do you that permutations, combinations when choosing a blog? So that should.
Right. So first of all, the institutional blogs which are run by universities, they are the most authentic things. They have every sort of legitimacy, so that's the easiest way to scan it. But what happens is, if you choose a specific field like corporate law, the most best corporate law firm law blogs are run by professionals like associates and advocates. So how to choose among them? So in the private blogs, you have to look upon the editors, the advisors, and their background. So suppose you come across any of our editors' profile, you will see that they have a track record of at least a year. They are here from long time. They have been writing, and you know that these people write. They are authentic. Secondly, you go to the board of advisors. So if you see names which are familiar to you, like suppose in our blog, we have advisors from Khaitan, we have from Sam, we have from Vidhi, we have from we are in talk with many tier 1 firms. So our authenticity is purely established that if these people are choosing to associate with us, then they know us and they know that we are not joking here. So one way is this, and of course the blog post. Be able to track their blog post. Like it's not that it's created a day before. They should have at least some record. Like for every blog, at least 4 to 5 posts per month is minimum. You should check that. So if a blog hasn't posted for a year, you should not go for it. It's already dead.
Wow. Yes, sir. This will be insightful for the students. Like that, you should help them out in finding the authentic blogs.
Yeah, we
Right,
should
now,
come up with an
before-
universal list.
Yeah. Come again.
We should have a list, but that will be like defaming to those who are not mentioned in the list. But it will be very helpful.
Yeah, I mean, we can ask some foreign institute to come up with a list. Right. I guess, Amay, are you there, Amay?
Hi.
Yeah.
Amay, it's time for rapid fire.
Rapid fire. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just before rapid fire, I mean, I just wanted to add something. I mean, this is too late now because what I wanted to say was after the second question, but yeah, anyways, I'll still go ahead. I mean, I have seen some blogs, I won't like to name them, but those blogs, without even reading the post once, they just, they mail us that, your paper has been
Posted away.
accepted. Yeah, they just post it straight away without actually reading at all. I mean, there are some blogs, but still, I mean, it's better if you don't name it.
Further, if anyone asks you money, don't get into that blog. That's probably the worst thing you can go. Nobody should ask you for publication fees, not even for like sending you a copy, sending you for the review process. It's just a scam. Like most one, I came across a post which published like 50 or 60 papers in one volume, and they charged each of 5,000 rupees. They are just making money. Then they will not promote it, and they will not research it, and it is a waste. This will not include the institutional, like some institutions contribute, like take competitions and all that, registration fees. It's a different thing. It's for private blogs.
Right. And just to add on that, I mean, what happens is that, actually people who actually write for those kind of blogs, they think that, it will look good on their CV, and if they apply to law firms, then it will really look good. But actually, I think it is not that case. I mean, you see
I
where
would
it
like
is.
to state that whenever you use a publication for CV, be very cautious, because you are just inviting questions. Like when you post a thing, they expect that you know everything on the topic. So it works two ways. So if you are able to answer everything, then they will be very impressed. But if they track you that you don't know shit about the topic, and you have stated it on CV that you have published a paper, then it will go against you. Like it will they will just treat you as a fraud. Like they'll say that this guy has lied on his CV, how can we expect him to work for us? So don't do that anytime.
Exactly, yeah. That is
Amay, you're muted.
Sorry.
Amay, you're muted.
so sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, Amay, before you move ahead, I just had a question to sir. Is that sir, as you mentioned that your primary interest lies in the field of admiralty laws. So how did you come up with the idea of arbitration and commercial laws? I mean, why is there not a
Admiralty law is basically everything on water, so it is not an exclusive field. Admiralty law, 90% of cases are dealing with contract, arbitration, and insolvency. So it's just that it is a separate jurisdiction dealing with the same subject matters. So it is mostly commercial laws. You will get everything inside it, like criminal law, contract law, insolvency law.
I had to say something over here. So just an addition to it, like as you said, you have a lot of interest in maritime law. I think, if I'm not wrong, there is only one individual from India who represents us in the United Nations. I feel that's ITCL laws. IT International Law for Seas and Customs. That is Neeru Chanda or something like that. I'm confused about it. Not sure.
I am not sure about that because most of the disputes which happen is in High Court level or Supreme Court level. So I know about the firms. I don't know internationally that much.
Move forward with the third segment now, which we call the on your fingertips round. It is kind of similar to a rapid fire round. So without waiting, Bodhisattva sir, which is your favorite Suits character?
I don't like Suits. My favorite law character is Saul Goodman from Better Call Saul.
Okay, and also since you have worked in various law firms, you have an interest in maritime law. So, what would you like to do after you pass out? Do you have an interest in the litigation part of the law or the transactional part of the law?
Litigation firms.
Litigation, interesting. And one silly law which you would create.
I don't know. Ban stupidity, silly law.
Okay, that is the need of the law.
Criminalizing.
And then also, so if sorry.
No, as in I didn't get the answer. Like, what would the silly law be? The answer I didn't get.
Criminalizing stupidity.
Okay, we have a Kim Jong-un in the house then.
Also, just to add on,
Why
that,
don't you?
Yeah, sorry.
Why don't say ban maritime lawyers from swimming?
I did that.
Right.
Oh yeah. Okay, so just to add on that, I mean, yesterday came across a post. Canada circulated I think a Google form. They asked people what would, cause the world to end sooner. I mean, it was any virus, then it was an earthquake or any war, and the fourth option was human stupidity. And around 87% of the people voted for human stupidity. Apart from nuclear bombs and shit. I mean, that just proves. And also, anyways,
Nuclear bombs are also human stupidity, actually. But okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so I mean, sir, if you would not name the law blog, I mean, if it would not be arbitration and corporate law review, what would you name it?
We were planning on something of the line as Indian arbitration and corporate blog and something like that. But we thought that as we have mostly, we have some international advisors and while limited to India only. So that's IABCL something like that we had thought of.
Right. I mean, glad to hear that at least you didn't try to, fit those words called just or, lex or, those cliche words.
No, it's very common nowadays.
Exactly.
Our first agreement was no Latin.
Glad to hear that.
Right.
And so what?
I have
sorry.
two more questions there. I would want you to tell us 3 things which a law student should not do in his law school life.
One is try to not fall in love, because it will waste a year or two of your law school. Secondly, you should not limit itself to one thing. Like, mooting is my passion, that's why I do only mooting. Don't do that, it's stupidity. Do everything. And thirdly, try to listen to your professors. Sometimes they make really sense. Like, after a year or so, you will know that he told this. Sometimes, not every time.
Sometimes is in capital.
Okay, sir, to move on, tell us any 3 things which are in your bucket list now. Foreign college trip. Like, we have done Goa, we have done Matheran, and we have done one more place nearby. Our plan is to foreign or at least go in the northern part of India from our college group friends.
One is that. Second is to intern in a Magic Circle law firm. That's the dream. And third is to probably own my own an establishment myself, like a company or firm. It is a long-term dream, but I'm fingers crossed.
Right, sir. Okay, since we have started the topic of foreign and traveling and interning in Magic Circle law firms, let me ask you another question. So I'll bring forward two options which sound very lucrative. Okay, so one option is if you are given an internship in a UK Magic Circle law firm, and on the other hand, you would have to choose from a 15-day trip to Europe. I mean, totally sponsored. You will get the best suite and complimentary breakfast, free passes and everything. What would you choose from?
Magic Circle law firm anytime. If I get a job there, my whole life is a trip.
Wow. Dedication.
It's real, yeah. Like when they offer a vacation scheme, that means like 80% you crack the job. It's very rare and very nice.
Right. And also, just to add, I mean, yeah, sir said that if you get a job in a Magic Circle law firm, it is as equal as getting a trip. So, I mean, just to substantiate that, I recently, there's a YouTube video of the Linklaters office in London. Yeah, that office has everything. That office has a music room. That office has a gym. There is a dance room. I mean, it looks less like a law firm. It looks, more like a, what do you say?
Restaurant.
Heaven.
But some of the Indian firms have brilliant office too. Like Khaitan's office is brilliant. If you visit, not like swimming pool and everything, but infrastructure is very great. Like all the Mumbai firms have pretty good office. Very showy.
Yeah. Okay. So
Am I?
Sorry.
I have one quick question which we have forgotten to ask. Is that how did you end up cracking the virtual assistant, internship to Professor Swenzer at the University of Basel?
So basically, this internship is not that lucrative because it had a lot of positions. Like it was a hell of a work. Like they had to compare 56 countries, so they needed like 200 or 250 people. So it did not require a lot of skill to crack it, but the main skill being to detect where the offer was posted. So for that you have to have like a lot of LinkedIn connections. Like one of my my acquaintance who is in London, he has a friend who is in alumni group of BIS Vienna. There it was posted. So he liked that post and that guy liked that post, and by that I saw that. So getting the offer is like most of the research assistant posts, it is not very difficult to get in. It is very difficult to know who is available. So you have to have a lot of consistency in your LinkedIn. Then it's not a big deal.
And also, just to add one point on that, I mean, do senior lecturers, I mean, do they really look at, in which year the aspiring research assistant is, or, I mean, if one guy has, written papers on that law, I mean, is that fine, or, he needs, some senior law student?
For law school, you never require a sort of year base. Like you can, I have seen people are in second year and they have a lot of stuff regardless of like which most of the fourth years have not done. It's all what your dedication is and what's your story is. Like if you have done something on that specific law, it will be look very good will look very well. So what you need is to convince that person that I am the best fit for your job. So if you tell them that I have published 4 papers in this exact topic and I have worked under this guy, or this guy is the best in the job and I have worked under him, then there is no reason to look at your university or at your year. And most of the research which is subject areas which you don't have in your course material. So suppose a research assistant is required in maritime law or cyber law, you won't be studying it for like in 5 years of schedule. So year does not matter at all. but what matters is you need to prove that you have the skill. So you have to prove that you have researched a lot, you have worked a lot. So for that you need some skill. So what usually happens is people don't get a lot of time in initial 2 years. So to build a good CV, they need 3 years. That's why 4th years are selected. So like that it works out. But if you can do everything in 2 years, why not?
Right. Okay. Anyone has any other question? Heman, do you have anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I had a
Add on to this. See, about the next big thing. 5 to 10 years before it was sports law, or beat IBC, maritime law. Apart from those laws, what do you think? Which laws would come up? Like competition law came up, IBC came up. Then sports law is doing well now, and securities law is actually doing well. So apart from that, what do you think the next big thing?
According to me, the most important thing is technology law. Right now, there are, I think, 3 or 4 firms dealing completely with technology law, and that will evolve a lot. Right now, we don't have a data privacy law, and we will be having this in like 4 or 5 years, because every country has their data privacy law. One which is very, it is an act without a teeth. It can't like really do well. It is the IT Act. So the personal data protection bill is ongoing. It will come up, and then we'll see a lot of firms focusing exclusively on technology. Right now, I think Ikigai law is focused totally on technology, and Legacy Services is has a lot of technology laws. But technology law is one law which I think definitely it will need, because nowadays, like in 5 years, we have seen a lot of development in technology. We went from normal mobiles to Androids. Then nowadays, every day we see an issue between Mac and Android and Windows, and it's very needed. And we don't have any data protection law, and that's very problematic.
yeah. Fine.
Right. And what about arbitration as the next, the next legal
Arbitration
factor?
is very important. And do any internship, do any subject, you will get at least 3 matters of arbitration, because every company, in every agreement, everything, they have the first clause of arbitration as a dispute resolution. If that does not work out, then they proceed to courts, and it's the new thing, it's the only thing. So you have no choice in arbitration. You have to learn arbitration a lot. Like in every in initial subjects are very important: contract law, company law, and arbitration. You can't escape this. You have to, because these are the constitutional law. These are the laws which are the roots of every other law. So if you have to learn these laws for sure. And arbitration, you can't escape arbitration. If you don't like it, you will suffer a lot.
Till now, it is very difficult to say that we are actually done with our script now. Wish I could have written more. We could have written more in the script. This time was very amazing, and it was very glad to hear from you. We got to hear many first-hand, insights from you. How to write research papers, your interest in maritime law, about the Indo-Sri Lanka maritime dispute. It was just too much of fun now. But I'm afraid, we'll have to say goodbye sometimes. So, it was a very good time. It